Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Scouser Tommies with me, Jim Boardman, and as always, Jay Reid. This one being recorded in one of these never-ending gaps in seasons that we seem to get these days. This time, it's because of an international break rather than somebody dying. So it's irritating if you're a club football fan, but no doubt exciting if you're an international fan. And I don't know about you, Jay, but for me, I mean, internationals are okay when they're on. It's like something to watch if there's nothing else on the telly. But you know, it doesn't come close to club football, does it? Or does it? Nah,
not really. I mean, the only time internationals are sort of fun, I guess, is when you get the World Cup and you get, the old cliche clash of styles or whatever, and you get a South American, Latin American team versus maybe an African or a European or something, and get these, crazy games where scores can be a bit mental. You'll discover players you've never heard of before. But this European Nations League crap that they've dragged out, it's just, they're trying to make it relevant, but they're just not. I think it's well documented how little international football means to a lot of local Liverpool fans. I don't know about those worldwide. Other people, different parts of the world, are obviously passionate or less passionate about the countries. But yeah, for locals, it just seems to be a distraction more than anything, and something where you sit on your hands and you kind of hope and pray that nobody comes back injured. And
yeah,
we've had this bizarre case where a lad who's been injured and not featured for us for 3 or 4 weeks, Jordan Henderson, has gone to join England. So I don't get it. I mean, one of my mates tried to justify it that we've gone to let him get some game time and whatever, but I think personally I'd rather have the security of your player within your own confinement, and if you want to give him game time, I'm sure we could have got a behind closed doors friendly or something with Tranmere or any other local team in the northwest who probably wanted to play. I know the championship doesn't take place, so the likes of Blackburn and Burnley could have offered us an 11-a-side and given the likes of Henderson and any other lads game time. I just think it's a risk that we've let him go, but so be it. It's not our decision at the end of the day, and we just hope he comes back unscathed.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I know years ago, UEFA or FIFA or one of those really clamped down on clubs, preventing players from leaving, and there's all kinds of rules in place now. If you've got to let your players leave by so many days before a match, and you can't have them play again for so long after, and all these different rules. And I kind of blame it on Ryan Giggs, because he was always getting injured for Wales. Mysteriously would pick up an injury just before an international break, and he'd be mysteriously recovered afterwards. But I do sometimes think with us, if we'd have said to England, look, Jordan's not fully fit, he's all right, but he's not fully fit, he still needs a bit of work. I mean, would they send someone out to come and check on him? Would they actually come and send a doctor out and say, let's just test how fit you are? I just can't see it. And you'd like to think, though, that especially though we're not a patriotic city by any stretch of the imagination, you would think the English FA would think of English clubs and think, right, how can we work with these? Because, I'd be tempted if we had a player that was in the England setup to get an operation booked in for when it's the World Cup. You know what I mean? Just so that if we've got to find a time to get something done when you've got one of these niggles, you do it during the World Cup so that they miss that rather than your games. But if you're working together with them, then maybe you won't do that. Maybe you look at it and It's just one of those things. Another one I saw today was Trent tweeting a picture of himself in the England kit. I mean, it's probably almost like a contractual thing that he's got to tweet it because it's that lovely new red England kit. But I think he said something like "Heart of a Lion" or something as the text to go with the tweet. But then I saw some people saying, "Oh, the Scousers won't be happy with that." But as someone replied to them, we're not that bothered. If he's happy doing it and he's enjoying it, we don't sort of say you can't do it. We're not ashamed of him playing for England. The only thing we ask is that he doesn't go and do, well, he tries to avoid getting injured for England. That's the kind of thing, isn't it? And by all means, if you want to have a go at him as an England player, we'll stick up for him as a Liverpool player. But we don't sit here and think, oh no, we don't want you to go and play for England. It's up to you. And as a professional footballer, then having that chance to play in those World Cups is maybe a good thing to aim for as a player. So why would we have a go at him for doing it?
Yeah, and the likelihood is he may play game time, but he's by no means a starter for England because, that Wally who's in charge doesn't really know what he's doing. And, the biggest contradictory in the world that he comes out and said you pick players on merit, and, you've got Harry Maguire, and Luke Shaw or whatever getting calls up, or, England players who aren't even playing for the club, and you've got other players who are playing regular game time, performing at higher levels. But if you play for, in quotation marks, one of the big clubs, you are more than likely to keep your England place. If Trent wants to play for England, that's the country of his birth. It's the biggest honour, as they say, probably in terms of being honoured for what you are as a footballer, to represent your country, because only so many people can do that. So, yeah, in that respect, it is a really big thing for players. But if he doesn't play, I think deep down we're all a bit more like, yeah, well, at least he's not going to run the risk of getting an injury within game time. Obviously, there's always injuries that can happen in training, and we had that mysterious one with Joe Gomez and allegedly Raheem Sterling that put Gomez out for a while. But, international football is one of the things, and again, I think you'll reference it to the World Cup. What we do is, I think, because we're not overly patriotic in terms of our country, if the Dutch team are playing, you're always going to keep an eye on them because, well, obviously for Virgil and, the Dutch team, tend to be an entertaining watch. And obviously you've got the Brazilian lads, you've got Nunes with Uruguay, Colombia and Egypt are going to the World Cup, so Diaz and Salah won't be there, which, could be a blessing for us come later on in the season, where we might have those two lads fresh, as you said, with the, potential for any injury operations or any minor niggles that might need fixing. Yeah, why wouldn't you pencil it in if the player isn't being selected for the country on a regular basis? So if it was, Trent, for example, and he needed some minor operation, well, why wouldn't you say, well, look, you're going to go there and you might get a game, a dead rubber, or you might get the odd 25 minutes here and there, or tell you what, we'll fix this little niggly problem we've got and you'll be fine for the rest of the year, or, it'll have a long-term effect on your career, then why wouldn't you? So
yeah,
it's one of the things, like, people always say, like, slate the likes of Jamie Carragher, who retired from international football early, and he was in an era of elite centre-half, so, his England caps were always going to be limited in terms of, being a first choice, given, obviously, the likes of Rio Ferdinand, Sol Campbell, end of his career, sort of, as Carragher was coming through, and you got Ledley King was always in the England squad regardless of whatever his knees were doing, John Terry. So, Carragher took the decision to prolong his club career by giving off the international career, and I'm sure, looking back, it's probably something that he doesn't really regret too much, because, Jamie Vardy's another one. I know he's not being great shakes this year, but if it prolongs your club career by having 3 or 4 times a year where you can, go and get yourself on a beach for 5-6 days and recharge your batteries, then why wouldn't you do it? Because at the end of the day, that's what pays you your wages, and you probably get more overall satisfaction, I would say, from playing club football, then, I think it's an honour thing to play for your country. But job satisfaction and, your day-to-day is your club. But that's just, an opinion of probably myself and a lot of people around this part of the world. But then, ask people 100 miles down the road, they'll probably have a stark different opinion to that.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think the other thing you get a lot is like we're watching World Cups and stuff, but we've all kind of we'll all sort of adopt a country or maybe sort of look at your heritage. When I think one of the last international football shirts I bought was actually an Ireland top because of slight Irish heritage, and whatever World Cup that was in at the time, because it's been a while since I bought an international top. But that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of thing that you do here, I reckon. And at the moment, some of those adopted sides you might be looking at is a country we might have, like a lot of our lot would have perhaps adopted a few years back, but maybe again. But I don't know. It's once again Mr. Darwin Núñez, isn't it? He plays for Uruguay, which reminds us of Suarez and how much we loved him at the time. But of course, because he's had a bit of a up and down start to the season, the way Liverpool have had, he's had that sending off, so getting the suspensions. And of course, there was all that sort of some ridiculous stuff, like he was really under the microscope in pre-season, that he missed a sitter in pre-season when, he's still on the beach. He's not even he's still in his swimming costume kind of thing. That's how much on the beach he still is. And there were people really over-analysing that. But that's kind of how football goes in the summer when there's no football. And maybe that's what we're going to do a bit now in this break. But it's continuing, isn't it? You were saying you'd seen something that I'd like you to explain it, that just shows this kind of obsession with him and trying to make out he's really bad. He's getting laughable now. And I suppose the thing about it is, though, the best way for him to answer it is on the pitch, and that they'll all have to shut up then, won't they?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing come out that he joined up with the Uruguay squad earlier, like there was an issue that he had done that. I mean, Liverpool had given the players extra time off because obviously the game against Chelsea didn't take place last weekend, and if anyone follows Liverpool players on social media, by the looks of it, Bobby Firmino was in Disneyland with his kids and his missus. So, that's what time off's for. And then you've got Núñez going to join up with Uruguay early. Probably, wants to get some hard yards in and whatever and impress the manager. I don't know what the Uruguay setup is, but would imagine Cavani and Suarez are still knocking about and possibly first on the team sheet because the World Cup's coming up and it'll be their last hurrah for those two lads. Yeah. I don't know. I honestly don't follow international football, especially South American, to be that in the know about who plays and who doesn't. But yeah, there was a clip doing the rounds yesterday, I think it was. He sort of has a challenge with a guy on the sideline, wins the ball, and then from the edge of the box, for me it was probably a cross towards the back post, and you could see a fella in the same colour bib making a run, but he's overhit the cross, and it sort of goes out somewhere probably between the 6-yard and 12-yard line on the byline from the penalty box. So well wide of the goal and nowhere near the fella who was in the box. But people were touting it down as he was trying to bend one in from the edge of the box, and he's being laughed at it for trying something in training, and that's what training's for. Training's for making mistakes, and he was only probably trying to find a teammate, didn't find him. But then there's another clip going around of Núñez was on the score sheet because he tapped one in training from like 8 yards. Like, this hypercritical analysis of one player is a bit mental, I think. The pressure's on him, like you said, of the start of the season he had. It wasn't ideal, but we're not doing the lad any favours, and I think if we were allowing him the time and space to get his head down and knuckle down, then I think we'll eventually reap the rewards. It's literally the middle of September. We've played about 9 or 10 games, and from which he's featured in 4. It's just crazy stuff. Like, you hark back to the likes of Fabinho and Robertson, who we probably didn't see rolled out until like October when they joined. So
Yeah.
You know, if we were being honest with ourselves, really, if we were to look at him and say, well, let's judge the lad in October, November and see how he's doing then, because that tends to be how Klopp players or Klopp signings have worked. Like you get the odd crazy one like Diaz, who literally doesn't hit the ground running, he hits the ground sprinting. And they're just like freaks of nature who've come in and been awesome. But, you know, new country, new language, new teammates, new setup, new tactics, it's all got to be taken into effect. And that's when we'll judge a player. And, you know, years ago, you'll know yourself better than I will, players come in and, you know, they had to earn the place rather than, you know, just be given it on a plate and prove that they were worthy. And, you know, I think we don't spend that much money and not have a decent player there. So I think people just need to take stock, and maybe we do need football back on a regular basis to distract us, because while we haven't got it, then I think we are going all a bit stir crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he's 21 as well, so it's not like he's some old guy, and that's the other thing that gets forgotten. If that was a 21-year-old Scouser who just worked his way into the first team, there'd be more time given to him. There'd be no way that a 21-year-old Scouser who'd worked his way, or even, you know, anyone sort of, even someone bought, say, like Raheem Sterling was brought in from another English club, and we've got other players like that. If one of these guys at 21 was doing that in training, there wouldn't be clips being shared about it, and if there wouldn't be any great fuss about it. There wouldn't be any clamour to sort of assume it means something. The price tags is what has made a difference to how people see him. But I think he's going to get his head down. I've seen quotes where apparently he had a similar start when he joined Benfica, you know, a bit of a slow start, and he just apparently stuck his Instagram account on hold and just got his head down and started sorting things out. And this is the kind of thing that happens in football now. And it's true when you're saying about other players as well in the past, and you've not got a guaranteed start. I mean, a couple of examples that stick to mind.
I'm not sure I understand.
Sorry, Siri doesn't even understand. A couple of things that stick to mind that jump out at me. So when Liverpool signed Stan Collymore, now in the end, Collymore didn't quite work out, but we had some moments with him, and it was at a time when the club wasn't at its best either. But I can remember thinking that before the days of rotation, you always kind of had, and Liverpool pretty much always had two up front, whether it was a 3-5-2, 5-3-2, 4-4-2, it's pretty much always two up front. And Liverpool could choose from Rush, Collymore and Fowler. And I always remember thinking at the time that Collymore shouldn't be saying, even if Collymore, there were people saying that if Collymore got dropped for Rush and Fowler, that it was a bad thing. In my opinion, at the time, we'd paid good money at the time for Collymore, but if his presence on the bench was making Rush and Fowler play the best they possibly could, your money's been well spent, you know, and that's before you get into rotation. And another story that I remember, I'm not even sure how true it is. It's one of those things that you kind of hear about locally, and you start wondering years later, was it true? Was someone winding you up? But Liverpool were linked with Tim Flowers as a goalkeeper back when Bruce Grobbelaar was our goalkeeper. And I think we played them at Anfield. And the story goes that Grobbelaar put a bouquet of flowers in the other goal with a card on it saying, "These are the only flowers coming to Anfield," or something along those lines. And whether it's true or not, that's the kind of thing, isn't it? It's like, you know, he's saying to him before he even gets here, you're not going to get in the team. And, you know, it's that kind of attitude. And I think you're right. Anyone who just assumes he's going to walk straight into the team's not really showing enough respect for the players we have got. I know we've lost one. He's gone to Germany. We can argue whether it was the right time or not. People can have that argument if they want, but the fact is he's gone. Now it's up to Darwin to prove himself and work his way into the team. And as you say, you know, maybe by the time that World Cup's out of the way and we've had a bit of a run of games and a bit less of the stop-startiness to things and that, you know, we'll get there. And I think at 21, I mean, if I was doing at 21 what he's doing, I'd be a very different person. I'm not sure what I was doing at 21. I definitely wasn't on that kind of money, getting that kind of attention, having to live that way and have everything scrutinised that much. It would make you go crazy. So, and maybe now that he's with people in Uruguay, maybe there's people there he can confide in as well. And I think it'll do him good. I think he should go early, and I think that's the way forward for him. You know, just keep working on things, keep improving things, and we've seen so many good players become brilliant, so many brilliant players become legends at Anfield, especially under Klopp, and I think that can still happen again. And you know what? If it doesn't, if it turns out to be a mistake in the end, well, everyone makes mistakes, and it's how you react to them that matters. And as we've said so many times, Liverpool react well to, but Liverpool make mistakes, but they react well to them usually. But as it is at the moment, we're in this sort of weird lull in between games. What can we look forward to when everyone gets back, do you think? Do you think we're going to see Andy Robertson playing again all the time? Is Costa starting to take his place? Are we going to rotate more once the games start coming again? Because there's going to be no time off, is there, once the games are back?
No, I think it's some mental thing where we've got like 9 games in 28 days or something like that across October. I think it's a bit of a mad one where we come back in and the first game is against Brighton, surprisingly at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, which is always lovely. We don't really get many of them these days. But then if you just look at the initial run, we've got Brighton, let's say, at home, and then midweek's back with Champions League, home to Rangers, followed by a weekend trip to the Emirates, followed by an away trip to Rangers the week after, followed by a home game to City. So, just 5 games on the bounce there within 2 weeks. If that isn't enough to whet your appetite back for club football, then, maybe club football isn't for you and maybe international boredom is. But,
yeah.
It continues then throughout the rest of October. Home to West Ham, a trip to Forest, which has got a nostalgic feel about it, followed by a trip to Ajax in the Champions League. A Leeds game, which has got a bit of a question mark. It says to be confirmed at the moment. It's home on the Saturday. So I don't know what the issue with that is. And then we drop into November with our final Champions League game on the 1st against Napoli, which hopefully, all being well, we'll be home and host and through into the next stage of the competition at that point. But, I think the initial excitement for me is those 2 games against Rangers, and obviously building up towards the Man City game, because it's one of them games now as the fixtures come out at the start of the season. You look for Everton, you look for United, and then you look for City. I think that's the sort of order I look in now.
Yeah.
But the games against Rangers have got that, the media will love it, the whole Battle of Britain thing, given recent events in the British monarchy. There'll be a little bit of spice added to that one because of different approaches or outlooks on the monarchy for the 2 clubs. And naturally, Champions League, 2 very famous grounds for atmosphere. There should be 2 good games regardless of, all the stuff off the field. I know there's sort of chasms apart in probably quality, but it will be hostile. And, as we've seen, anything can happen in the Champions League at Anfield, and anything can happen in Europe at Ibrox. If you look at what they've done over the last couple of years, getting to the Europa League final and turning much bigger, better teams over at Ibrox. So that for me is something really to look forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as well, because I always think when you get English clashes or British clashes in Europe, that you've not got your Premier League referees taking part, who, love them or hate them, kind of work how English football works. So they use English football rules where, the kind of thing I mean, where you can, the amount of fouls that get let go that shouldn't, and the amount of days where you've got a referee, you would have been better off as a traffic warden measuring how far someone's parked from some double yellow lines with a ruler. You get that kind of referee. They're just different in Europe, and not necessarily good. They're just bad in a different way. And I always think, these, I mean, it's a derby. There's no other way to describe it. In European terms, this is a derby. This is an English city against a Scottish city, basically. It's got a lot riding on it. It's not just for what it is itself in terms of the competition and the points in the group and all the rest of it. It's a massive game. And then you've got some referee coming along who probably doesn't understand just how much adrenaline's going to be flying around and all the rest of it. So there's a lot to look forward to. A lot of, it's just an exciting thing, isn't it? And as you say, it's what you watch football for. These are the nights that you remember, good and bad. You remember them. And, for everyone who has a bad night, there's someone else having a good night. He just feels like, I don't know, all I can think of is like Graham Souness being involved in this one for one or the other sides, and it just being...
Where is he going to plant his flag?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It just feels like that. So I'm really looking forward to it. An interesting one for Kenny as well, because I'm pretty sure Kenny was... I might be misquoting. I've got a feeling he was Rangers before he was Celtic, but obviously he's Liverpool with a bit of Celtic before now. The Rangers he's long forgotten, but be interesting to see how he reacts to it in the stands and whether we get to hear from him. But yeah, they're thick and fast. I mean, those games you've just listed. I mean, they're starting off with Brighton as well. So I think we said on the last pod we dodged that sort of new manager thing that you can get with Chelsea because they got Brighton's manager, and then the game was postponed, so we didn't have to face him in what would have been his first game. But then now you're playing Brighton, who maybe by then will have a new manager. But if the philosophy at the club's still the same, they're not going to be an easy team to play, are they? I don't think. Anyway, we just have to see. But I don't think they're going to be an easy team to play, and I think we've got to be on our guard in that game because it could easily be one of those. Hate to use the phrase, one of those banana skins.
Yeah, I think this is the moment for a cheap plug for Dave and Carl's Scouser pod because they've appointed Roberto De Serbi, and I had to Google who he was. I didn't know who he was. Former Shakhtar Donetsk, obviously, given the situation in Ukraine, their footballers sort of came to a grinding halt, although they are back in some competition. Football, I think Shakhtar are playing via Poland for the Champions League games, and he used to manage Sassuolo, and I would have a look and say, I've heard of Sassuolo in Italy. I don't know much about them. They've had a couple of okay players from all accounts come through their ranks, so you'd probably say they're on a similar level par to what Brighton are in the Premier League in terms of a smaller club who've got a few decent talents and maybe occasionally punch above the waist, but with a solid outfit in the top division. And Shakhtar, before obviously the situation that's happened there, sadly, are one of the couple of big teams within Ukraine. So he's coming probably with a decent pedigree, and Brighton tend to be a club that do things properly on and off the field. So you'd imagine they've done the due diligence and they've got the right guy in their eyes, and if he can continue what I know he said Harry Potter, then it's Graham Potter. what he's done so far and what he's built, then they are going to be a decent outfit. There's a lot to like about them. There's a lot of tidy young players coming through there, so it will be a potential banana skin. I think the relief we've probably got is it's at Anfield.
Yeah.
And it's 3:00. It's not 12:30. One of them dour early kickoffs after the international break, which, if the term banana skin, that's coming with a massive oil slick as well. The R12 early kickoff, especially if it was away from home. So I would hope and fancy that, that the international break will have given a lot of people time to, build up the anticipation for football because, as I said, those games coming up and you get into that game and the likelihood is coming off an international break, going into a Champions League week and a heavy run of fixtures, rotation will be a thing. And you mentioned just before about Costas and Andy Robertson, for example. I don't see why Costas shouldn't be starting all things, given that he's coming back from international football fit and healthy. The performance he put in against Ajax was spot on for me. Like, he had a couple of moments early on, but once he settled down, he was brilliant. And nobody's big enough, too big to be scrutinised. And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, Andy Robertson over the last 18 months has probably only put together 4 or 5 months of decent football under his belt, and there has been times where Costa's probably deserved more of an opportunity than he's got. And if this one's come about through injury, then I don't think he should be taken out of the team unless he does underperform. But what he gave in that Ajax game, and not only that, his dead ball delivery compared to Andy Robertson's is night and day. Like, I love Robbo as a player, but he cannot deliver a decent corner, or if he does, it's 1 in 20. And Costas just seems to put so many threatening dead balls in.
Yeah.
We've got a big side, and the goal eventually did come at Ajax from a corner, but I think we must have won about 7 or 8 corners, like where the ball went into the box and we were putting our heads on it. Virgil had 2 or 3 attempts on target, and if we're looking for ways to get back to a winning formula, then why wouldn't you use the weapons you've got in having big players in our team and a man who can deliver a set piece like he can? So yeah, there's lots of questions in terms of who will line up and who will be available, but I think that one for me is one where the lad in form should be keeping the shirt.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing we're saying about the fitness as well. We need all the players who are fit now to stay fit, but then I'm hoping this bit of a gap gives a chance for some of those other lads just to get the fitness sorted out a little bit and get a bit closer to being in contention. You want Klopp to have problems, that is not a horrible problem to have, is it? Who'd you pick at left back? He's not got the same sort of problems throughout the rest of the pitch at the moment, but hopefully by the time everyone comes back, by the time the football gets back again, the real football, that 1st of October, that we'll see some real choices for him. Just another thing I saw yesterday, which kind of blast from the past again, is Charlie Adam announcing his retirement from football. I've never known, this is an exaggeration to say, I've never known such a divisive player, but that player, he just seemed to be like chalk and cheese to people. The amount of people who loved him, whatever he did, and the amount of people who just hated him, it was unreal. I mean, he wasn't a 10 out of 10 player or a 0 out of 10 player, but I don't know. It's sad that the thing I remember most about him,
I know what you're going to say,
penalty in the League Cup in 2012. Yeah,
because it went flying over my head. I think I was on about row 30 as well that day, and it sailed way over my head. Yeah, I mean, he's one of those players who, he had a reputation as a gift of football, and I think it was the left foot thing, it's just one of them, mysteries in football. Left foot in football is obviously less common than your right footed, and if you get a good left foot of football, it always looks just a little bit more elegant on the eye. And he did have a reputation for a good set piece and a decent strike on him, but I think that was that weird dark period of Hodgson that we went under, where we were signing players who we were nowhere near Liverpool standard, but then the guy in charge was not Liverpool standard, so I suppose you get what you wish for in terms of having him in charge and giving him the keys to the kingdom and whatever.
I think Kenny signed him, didn't he? But
was it?
I think so, yeah. But I think the trouble was he signed him into a squad that had been ravaged by Hodgson. So
so see, it's all a bit of a mess. That what was it, 2011 to 2013 time, something like that. Yeah. So I sorry, Roy, but you don't barely deserve an apology.
Yeah, if it was Roy, it wouldn't have been Charlie Adam. It'd be some sort of let's not even go there. We can think of worse players, and it would have been one of them.
Was it Poulsen he brought in or something like that?
Yeah. Kinchevsky.
Joe Cole and the likes. Because Hodgson only lasted 6 months, but it felt like 6 years. That's what it was. I think your mind was drained.
We were stuck with some of his players for 6 years, I think, weren't we?
Yeah, the likes of Joe Cole giving a lucrative 5-year deal or whatever it was. Yeah. And, he couldn't pass wind at the time, never mind pass a ball.
Well, he couldn't get his breath together quick enough to pass a wind.
No. Well, he was out of the game within about half an hour on his debut, where he plunged himself into an Arsenal player. But as the song goes, those were not the days, my friend. But yeah, he had a decent career. I think the majority of people remember him for his time at Stoke, and I think that, in the nicest way possible, sums up the type of player he was. That was his level. Stoke were mainstays in the Premier League for about 7 or 8 years, and he was there for the majority. The latter years, if anyone's seen any pictures or clips of him, playing in Reading or Dundee, and I think he had done a little spell at St Mirren as well. he looked like a Sunday League footballer who'd just been out on the tiles all night and had the kebab about 6 hours earlier, got up and splashed some water on his face and went, I'm ready to play now. And calling it a day was probably about 2 years overdue. But, it's a sign of the time, because myself especially, growing up and seeing these players, through their careers, and now they're finished. And, it just shows how short a footballer's career is, I suppose. And, harps back to the old saying of, like, you've got to enjoy it while it lasts, sort of thing. And, I think that's pretty prevalent, especially in the times that we're going through, not only on football, but in what's going on around us.
Yeah, I think as well, the other thing about the sign of the times is, 2012 was that League Cup penalty that still hasn't landed. 10 years on, they don't sound like the kind of players that we will be looking at now. And that's not even having a go at Charlie Adam on that, but it feels like we finally got to a point where I always kind of sort of said, like, if players were in catalogues, like, like you go in like an Argos catalogue or whatever, if people still remember such things, the catalogue that we're looking in, we were always at that time looking in the wrong catalogue. We were looking in the cheapo catalogue, the bargain catalogue, the home and bargain catalogue, if you like. But now we're looking in the glossy ones, aren't we? We're looking in the glossier publications. We're not necessarily falling for, maybe some people want it. We're not in the totally glossy publications that are like, individually handcrafted or something, but we're looking in the right place, I think. Now the players we're looking at seem to be much higher quality, and you can mock signings if you want, but we are making efforts, I think, most of the time, looking for the top ones, unless we're stuck, unless we're in a hurry, unless there's an emergency like we had with the defenders during that COVID season, maybe a little bit in this transfer window right at the end. But on the whole, we're looking much higher quality, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think even if we take it to this season, obviously we brought in Arthur, and that's what we're going to stick with rather than the continental pronunciation. He's been knocked as well by some sort of, this crazy media frenzied world that we live in, because he turned out for the under-21s twice within about 5 days or 4 days this week, and his latest appearance was on Tuesday night against Rochdale in the, I don't know, it's Papa John's, but I'll always call it the Johnson's Paint Trophy because that's what it was years ago.
Right, yeah.
The EFL trophy thing or whatever. So obviously the top end clubs these days, for those people who don't know, from the Premier League, can submit an under-21 side to take part in the trophy if they wish. And the idea obviously is to allow these younger players at the bigger clubs opportunities to play competitive football at a higher level. Obviously, the League One, League Two teams who take part in the competition, rather than playing against those in your own age group. But you can feature a nominal amount of players over the 21 age bracket. So Arthur put himself out there, and I think he got 60 odd minutes under his belt. And the most bizarre change that I think you'll ever see in Liverpool time, seeing Arthur subbed off in a weird trophy for lower league clubs for 33-year-old Chase Spearing, who looks like he's just left the sunbeds behind and rocked up for the Liverpool gig. But the lad has reportedly hired a physio and hired a nutritionist and a personal trainer and whatever, and people are knocking him, saying, like, why would he be doing all that? Like, what state is he in? Well, the state he's in is he was signed late, and he's way behind in terms of the fitness levels required at Liverpool. Mm-hmm. But instead of sitting on his haunches and letting it go day by day, he's putting the extra miles in, and he really wants to salvage his career. And I think that's to be credited. And if he wants to make his Liverpool career, as long as it may be, whether it's a few months or a few years, he's certainly putting all the eggs in the basket of trying to make it last a few years rather than a few months. And hopefully, as you said before, like, in terms of October time and these games coming thick and fast and having players available back from injury and so on, if Arthur is going to be a viable option for us, well, he's certainly putting the effort in to look like he wants to be there and try. And I think that's to be commended, really. I can't think of anything bad to say about the lad. And yeah, it was just one of them mad things where Rochdale away, he probably never heard of Rochdale in his life, and he's rocked up there on a Tuesday night, and then Jay Spearing comes on for him. A crazy turn of events, but I think the positives have to be taken that he got minutes in his legs and he's doing everything he can to be a viable option for us, and hopefully we will see him in a red shirt in those games in October, because if they are as thick and fast as they are looking like, then we're going to need every option we've got in midfield, because it's been sparse, and he's a Brazil international at some point in his career. I know you've got players who've probably had a couple of caps for Brazil, but you don't play for Barcelona, Juventus and Brazil if you're not half decent. So I think he is one of the ones out of the top end catalogues rather than the bargain basement bins, like you were saying.
Yeah, and I think I love that idea that you're doing stuff over and above what you're expected to do, because I think you can imagine, you sort of hear about other players coming in and they're sitting around and then they're photographed walking around the Albert Dock or something, and maybe they've had a wine with a lunch or something on the day off, and then before you know it, there's loads of negative connotations coming from that. I won't even name players, but there's some players who instantly attract that kind of attention, certainly in Liverpool's past, and all of a sudden they're branded as having drink problems or something, and all they did was have a glass of wine with the lunch with their other half or whatever, like anybody else might do on a day off. But I think it's not a job, it's a career. It's more than a career, it's a dream career to be a footballer, and I think if you've got players who are willing to put the extra effort in, that's amazing. My job, the stuff I do, there's times when I think, when I sort of changed and different things, that I was doing, then I'll do things on my own time to get myself better at it. Not because I'm sort of, wanting, because I think I'm bad. I just want to get better at it. So when I'm in on that day, I'm prepared for it. So it kind of, because that helps me, that's an investment. And he's investing in himself, isn't he? He's doing that. He's obviously found out. I can't imagine what it's like, but you hear players talk about coming to Anfield and the way the fitness works here and really being totally shocked, complete shock to the system. And this is players who have done keeping fit for a living for many years now suddenly hitting this. So I'm glad he is. He's finding the right way to do it for him. He's finding the best way to do it for him. He wants to live up to expectations. He wants a place in the squad. And as we said earlier on about no automatic place, you've got to fight for it. What a way to fight for it. And yeah, Jay Spearing, that's another story, isn't it? But, I'm sure it is a welcome addition around the training ground sort of thing with the youngsters and stuff. It's more on his coaching that we want him. But if they're the rules, then, have an older head around them to teach them a few bits and pieces, because ideally, rather than shopping in the glossy brochures, what you want is for one or two of those other players who were out that night to start making a mark, to get some experience and confidence and build on what they've got and be one of our sort of new signings for the future in the side coming forward. Because no matter how much money you've got, it's good if you can save a little bit and not sort of spend it all on signings that you don't need to, because then when the time comes, you've got more of it. It wouldn't be a Scouser Tommies without a quick mention of Everton, would it? And I saw a headline in the Echo that Frank Lampard's task made clear at Everton as club look to recover £13 million blow. And it's down to them getting less money off the broadcasting income, because there's so much of the money from the TV deals that all the clubs get. So there's 20 clubs, they divide it by 20, give or take anything that goes out in parachute payments. But on the whole, 20 clubs all get the same. But then there's also what is actually prize money. I think it's down as prize money. So the higher up the table you finish, the more money you get. So Manchester City, apparently for the merit payment, got 41.2 million, but there's a bit of a disgruntled feeling in this Echo article written from the blue side that they only got 10 million, so they got a quarter. But, if they're relying on TV money, then they need to get higher up the table. They can't be sad at finishing 16th. And I would imagine that there's definitely more money comes your way for how many appearances you get on TV for, certainly on the domestic rights. They probably got a couple of games on TV last season that they wouldn't have got if they hadn't been in the relegation zone. And Goodison was full for those games as well. Relegation is not necessarily, flirting with relegation is not necessarily a bad thing for them. So I'm not sure why this 13 million suddenly a blow, other than a kind of almost like the lines coming out of the club that there's going to be no money to spend and those spendthrift days are gone.
Yeah, I suppose, it goes two ways. If if you play good football, you'll be on television because you'll be entertaining to watch. And if you play good football, you'll probably be higher up the table. Therefore, you'll be rewarded financially for finishing in a higher position. So, if you're bad at football, which Everton are and were last season, then, why should you be rewarded for being bad? Like, it doesn't make sense. If you're that bad at, entertaining things and your own crowd are booing you on a regular basis, then, why should you be rewarded financially for that? Like, surely that's not how it works. And as you said, they were probably in games, on television because, they were nearly going down, but they never quite. And, even this season, I don't think they've scored 2 goals in a game yet this season. They've lost 2, drawn 4 on the bounce, then they won 1 last weekend against West Ham in the Davy Moyes derby, 1-0. So, they've not scored 2 goals, I don't think, in a game. I could be wrong by that, but I don't, as much as we do talk about them and laugh at them, I don't pay too much into detail. And the fact that I've not been in work for a few weeks, who blue nose mates who I can usually have a laugh and joke with and laugh at, I've not seen. So, I don't know the ins and outs of what's going on. But if you're averaging a goal a game or 0.5 or less or whatever it is in the XG markets, then, why would Sky be knocking on your door saying, we want to put you on television this week because, that 1 goal a game that you might score is really worth that extra few million quid in your coffers. And, instead we could just put Nottingham Forest on, who've just bought a whole new squad and more, and have the potential to finish games 6-4 or something like that because they haven't got a clue what they're doing. But, at least there's goals, and that's the name of the game. It's in sort of broadcasting rights. If it's entertaining, then, people are going to watch, and, it all dominoes effect into another. But if they are towing the line at the skint again because they're building the shiny new stadium in the sandpit on the dock, and, I did see an article the other day that Everton Stadium has been picked over Anfield for the potential Euro 2028 bid, I think it is, or 2030. I don't know which way round. I think it's 2030 because way the World Cup's for. Could be wrong. 2028, 2030. Either way, I digress. Anfield and Old Trafford are being overlooked, but Everton's shiny new stadium has been picked, and that just shows what it's worth and how good it could be and how big Everton are. Well, if you look deeper into the facts, MK Dons has been selected as a potential venue. So what does that tell you, really? Like, the Emirates was overlooked ahead of the Euro bid, but Tottenham's was taken into account because it's slightly newer. I think that's all they're sort of looking at. It's regional. So if they're picking one from Merseyside, then they're picking Everton's. Fine, so be it. Our pitch doesn't get teared up. We'll have big concerts on our ground anyway.
That's the thing, isn't it, though? They don't just, like, the people, these organisers don't just suddenly decide, we're going to borrow that ground and we're going to borrow this ground. They talk to the people who own the grounds and see how the land lies before they even say anything.
Yeah.
And I bet they weren't offering the money for Liverpool. Liverpool are thinking, nah, we can make more money putting whoever, putting Pink on again or whoever, Rolling Stones, whatever. You're right.
Not only that, but I think, like, the logistics as well of it. Like, obviously, as I said, the regional aspect, they've got to have stadiums for each area. But let's be honest and call a spade a spade. Everton's ground is probably more logistically accessible when it is eventually built. It's on the docks. It's not too far from the city centre, and one would imagine there's going to be some sort of tram or train link connecting the very heart of city centre, all of, the 1 mile down the dock road that it is, for those who have got an idea of how the city centre's set up. In terms of getting to Anfield, anyone who's been to Anfield, it can be a bit of a pain in terms of where we are situated for public transport access. So, stuff like that is taken into account. I'm sure, like, the Etihad, I think, was suggested from Manchester because it's more accessible
similar thing,
than Old Trafford. So, it's no big thing, but, let them have their moments in the sun or in the rain as it is today because it's torrential downpour out there. But if that's what gives them their kicks and the buzz that, their stadium that might be potentially picked for the Euros, then so be it. And then, there might be an occasion in that time, if the Euros does get awarded to us, that there could be a game where you've actually going to visit that stadium for, because other than that, why would you want to go to whatever Everton are producing? There might actually be football of a European standard at that ground, because I can't imagine it's going to be there any other time in the future.
No. The only time you go to that, I don't know what they're going to call it, New Goodison, whatever you want to call it, is you'll watch. If they put gigs on, there might be a good gig there. If they've got, they won't be playing in Europe, I don't think. So maybe there'll be a friendly they can organise, internationals. I know when it was the Women's World Cup in the summer, I thought it was funny that obviously women's football rightly is starting to get more of a profile now, and more people are watching it. And I think, there's a long way from parity between the men's and the women's games, but there is improving. But clearly when they were planning the Women's World Cup, they didn't realise how popular it was going to be with some of the stadiums they picked. But I thought it was funny that they picked, I'm trying to remember which ones it was now, but I know they picked the Manchester City's kind of secondary ground, the sort of training ground that they have for the young ones. They picked a stadium in Lee, which I think's only got sort of halfway between Liverpool and Manchester, and it's only got seats on 3 of the 4 sides or something like that. It's not a big stadium. But I can just remember in the literature about it, when they were sort of saying where the venues were, they were trying to make out these big city names, and they wanted to distinguish between them. So Manchester City's other ground was down as Manchester, but Old Trafford was down as Stretford or something like that. It wasn't down as Manchester, which I just thought was funny at the time, because they always hated us saying that they weren't from Manchester, but they don't seem to bother us anymore, which I think it's a good thing. I think it shows how much we're getting on. But there was a time when the Manx could really get under our skin, and I just don't feel that now. So maybe that's something for a future podcast. That are the Manx getting us under our skin as much as they used to? I don't think so. Are we still getting under Blue Nose's skins as much as we used to? I think
always.
So.
I don't think that'll ever go away. And I think the derby the other week was, a classic example of that. Like, it weren't the greatest derby, but, seeing Connor Cody, that lifelong Red, going absolutely mental when he scored and was eventually ruled out. Like, I think that angered Everton fans more than the joy they probably would have got had Cody have allowed, or the goal being allowed to stand. The fact that it was the reaction from him, the ex-Liverpool player, and then, the VAR, because Liverpool favour VAR, even though the decision was clear as day that it was offside, just angered them even more, and that was all they could end up talking and thinking about. But I think that's one thing that'll never change. Players come and go, teams change, managers come and go, but being better and laughing at Everton is something that'll always remain the same. And there might be an odd occasion where they can have 15 minutes of fame and glory, but we revert to type, and we will always be the big fish in the city.
Yeah, you can tell. I mean, you can tell when you're talking to an Evertonian, because you get, say you overhear some Liverpool fans reminiscing in the pub or on the bus or whatever about some game gone by. They're talking about this great goal or this wonderful cross or the excitement of winning this trophy or something like that. Whereas when you hear Evertonians, it's always about some bastard referee that's done some evil thing, some linesman, some refereeing decision. And they always reminisce about the negatives. They never reminisce about positives. Their positives are getting something over on us, like a 0-0. That's their positives.
Or us losing and they've had a draw or something like that. Like, they probably would have spun it this weekend that, wow, how did you get on this week? Well, we didn't play, but Everton won. We didn't play, so therefore it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. But the fact that they've picked up their first win of the season 6 games in or 7 games in, and they're still below us, and we didn't play. They'll still spin it as they've had a better week than us. But that's the sort of level of people you're working with. For those people who aren't in and around the city or are in regular contact with the Blue Nose, that's the sort of stuff that you deal with on a daily basis. So, actually, I can't wait for the international football to be over so we can get back to that, because you don't really get that with international football. I think it is the sort of thing that the hiatus of a break away from it. But I think what we are now is we're on the cusp of a crazy period, and I think those people who are listening on Anfield Index, we've tried to fill your time over these last 2.5 weeks of non-red action. But once the games are back, then he will come thick and fast. And I think we do aim to keep this regular now. We've got a few things to talk about, and I suppose as the games come, they always create more talking points. So we should be back in your ears as soon as we possibly can. And if you are watching international football this weekend, best of luck. And if you aren't, then find something useful to do with your time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, last weekend, all you could see was wall-to-wall coverage of the funeral. Now, this weekend, at least you can watch some kind of football, even if it's not great. And maybe there'll be a play for the future that we can see. And you're right. I mean, football, we always say this. I've said it so many times. Football's the distraction that you have from real life. Whatever's going on in real life, football's the thing that it's better to be annoyed about football than real life. It's better to be distracted from depressing aspects of real life by having a good time with football. So there's no football on, but as Jay just said, we're going to do our best. Whenever there isn't football, we'll try and keep stuff coming out across the channel, across the whole of Anfield Index, so you've got something to listen to, something to distract you from real life. And if you're listening to certainly this podcast, something to laugh about in blue, probably. So until next time, thanks for listening. We will be back soon, and hopefully before Liverpool play again. And by then, maybe we'll have a better idea of who's fit and who's not fit and how we're going to line up for the next game. But there's loads coming, and we do apologise if we don't give them all the justice they deserve. But you know what? We'll do our best across Anfield Index, and keep listening. We'll see you soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.